Hey there.
This is Derek. Hello. Can you hear me? You cannot hear me. Matt. Matt.
Oh, it appears that you can hear me, but you are correct. I cannot hear you. Maybe I have the wrong speaker selected. I do. Talk some more.
Hey.
Yeah, I hear you now. Zoom keeps failing to select my preferred audio device, even though I keep setting it. So I took notes. When Lisa and I did like a really quick handoff. I'm pretty sure you were invited, but I don't think you were there. Just to do like a handoff between the PTOs, and I took notes on what she said we should cover today. I can't for the life of me find it, but I know she wanted us to cover both the legal, updating people on the process of governance and whatnot, and like how those
I
docs are
don't.
coming.
She didn't. Why would she not share that with me?
She did. I'm saying you were definitely invited to that meeting. I took notes and I don't remember where it was. It was last week on Friday. NRE Labs internal stand up right before the governance meeting at 9:30 or 11:30 your time. Yeah, you're on that.
Okay. Well, if we're the only two that show up to this, we're not going to post a recording.
Dude, if this was like a government agency, we would have to. Like if this was like a NASA open source stand up, there would be no question. We would have to post this incredibly sad short conversation between us.
Yeah, I'll give it a minute. We really need to get other people to join that we know should join. It's the time that I think does it.
What do you mean? How early in the morning it is?
Yeah.
Maybe, but I think also talking about it well before the actual time of the meeting is good too, like sending reminders and whatnot.
Yeah, that probably helps.
I think that's probably the biggest thing is just being present.
Yeah, we need to come up with an agenda for both the stream and for the call next week and post it today, and then do regular reminders for the remainder of the week.
Yeah.
Because Lisa's been asking for that every single week, and I still haven't done it. But I don't know what to talk about next week. Like I'm running out of stuff to imagine that we can just talk about until we get a release and until the work is coming along, until we have, community members that community.
Yeah.
If we could just make that a verb, that'd be great. Because it's just us working on what we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll come up with something. Well, let's brainstorm like 15 minutes.
Sure.
On that.
You'll do it now?
Sure, why not?
Got nobody else joining at the moment anyway.
So
it's only 6 minutes in. We could stay on for quite a while and wait.
Yeah, I should have the rest of the obviously the bash session I should have had them done last week, but it'll definitely be done this week. The FFR thing will be done. Oh, here we go. Somebody's joining.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hi guys.
How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing all right. Do you go by Tom?
Yes.
Nice. Have we met before, Tom? This is Cloud Toad.
Sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
Have we met before? This is Cloud Toad.
I don't think so. This is like first time when I joined to this session.
Oh, okay. Where do you? So where do you? Or what company do you work for?
So at the moment for Netcracker.
Netcracker?
Yes.
I have to Google that. I've never heard of that.
You should try.
Yeah, I think I've heard of. Oh, that's right. Yeah, wholly owned subsidiary of NEC.
Yes, exactly. NSC.
It's a cool name, I gotta say.
Yeah, Netcracker is a cool name. Nice. Well, thanks for joining.
I also see the packet pushers joined.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of them, because that's all it says is packet pushers. So I have to assume that every single one of them is on.
Yeah, we're sentient now. Just kind of like a hive mind thing. You talk to one of us, you talk to all of us. That's just how that works.
You guys are like the monster in Stranger Things season 3.
No, we have a high level account we share for some things, and then we have to I renamed myself. I don't know how long it takes the cloud magic in Zoom to work.
Yeah, I see it now. Yeah. So that's cool. You all use the same account. You can all get compromised at the same time.
Well, we also have our own accounts. It gets confusing, but it gets really expensive. Everybody has their own accounts. So
yeah. We actually went through that ourselves. First Juniper was doing a Zoom pilot, and so we just piggybacked on that. But then Juniper ended that pilot, and we're pretty sure they're not going to go with Zoom because of what you said. It is expensive, especially if you had a lot of users, and we have a lot of users. So we just ended up buying our own for this project, and we got one user. It's a shared account. Everyone's using it, like the early days of Netflix.
All right. So we have So I'm actually curious. I wanted to ask Tom some more questions before we start. Tom, so what is your interest in NRE Labs?
So, you know, I'm playing and actually I'm doing these demo labs and proof of concept labs, and I'm using VMX, VSRX, and until now I didn't try. Actually, I tried, but I didn't use for the real proof of concept labs virtual go fix tool, and I'm wondering how it's going all this stuff in this NRE lab, and actually I'm interested in this community too. Yes, I would like to participate and so on.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you. So again, thanks for joining the call.
I'm glad. Yes.
So we'll go ahead and kick it off. This is more or less an open agenda. We're mainly because we're about to have a major release here, or a release anyway, with new content and new features in the platform. And we've talked about these pretty extensively in prior community stand-ups, as well as our live stream that we do every Monday. So there's not a lot to update on that. Just that, you know, a lot of stuff we've been talking about is about to go live, probably by the end of the week.
Okay, great. So I will try to participate as much as I have time, and you know, I can't promise that every time I will join, but I will try.
Okay, sure. The biggest thing that's coming out of this change, we talked a little about this yesterday, is we're going to separate the curriculum releases from the platform releases. Obviously, there's a dependency there. If there's features that are being, you know, if there's new features in the platform that are in master that you're creating lessons against, you'll have to develop those lessons against that, against master. Versus if you're developing lessons for the existing platform to be released sometime before the next platform release, then you'll have to, when you spin up self-medicate, we'll be making changes to self-medicate that allow you to spin up a version of the current NRE Labs website inside of self-medicate, or this current version of the platform, so that you can develop against the existing the existing platform. So there'll be a switch you can toggle at the command line or in the configuration file for self-medicate. But that's really important because we'll have a separate cadence and a separate push for trying to get as much content as we can onto the site. And we won't potentially every single week. That'd be really great if we can get at least a few stages every single week released. And that'll give us a lot more to talk about, actually, on a weekly basis as that evolves. I don't know if we're at a place yet where we're kind of going over the first draft of a number of different sort of governance docs, things, what the structure of the community is, how contributions are made, the code of conduct, all those things. We're going to bring that to the community pretty soon here for review and discussion. And we'll hopefully be able to finalize those things out, I hopefully in the next month or so.
Yeah, I worked on, when I came back from a vacation last week, I sat in a few of those meetings. Lisa is currently pushing. There's actually quite a few sort of parallel efforts going on in order to just basically create governance draft docs. I can tell you that that work is nearing the end. The main function there, at least from like a the Juniper people on the call perspective is the existing terms of service were effectively copied from our EngNet community, which is not at all what we want to do here. Because this is not, unlike EngNet, this is not a Juniper owned project. It's a Juniper started, I guess, project, but
sponsored.
Yeah. So the terms definitely need to change to reflect that and to keep it as open and inclusive as possible. And that's the effort that's going on there. That's actually nearing the end. I was very encouraged by the last meeting. Fortunately, this is not my normal experience, but our corporate lawyers are actually very understanding of what we're trying to do, and they have thrown up absolutely no barriers. We've got some good folks that are helping us get that out there. But the goal is not to get the governance docs finished and then dump it on everybody. The goal is just to get a set of draft docs ready so that we have something to share and something to iterate on. I know both the Packet Pushers folks as well as some of the other vendors that are interested, like Cumulus. They've expressed interest in having us produce a starter doc or starter set of docs, I guess, that we can then iterate on. And so that's really what we're doing. So since we don't have to finalize it, and that's obviously not what we want to do, we want the community to really finish creating these governance docs. That effort is actually nearing completion. We expect that to be done probably within the next few weeks. And then, we'll put those docs somewhere and we can continue to build them. The things that we're not doing right now is deciding what sponsors get, who's able to have what level of access to various committees and things like that. That's kind of stuff we want to work on together. So we're mostly just getting the boring boilerplate legalese out of the way first, and then we'll get that stuff published. And as I say that, I have exhausted my knowledge of the process because I have no experience with legal around open source other than, hey, please, lawyer that works for my company, can I please open source my software? So don't ask me any questions because I won't answer them. I'll try. I will absolutely try, but I probably won't be very good at answering it. The other thing, in addition to the governance work, slightly back more in a technical direction. One thing that I personally am working on as hard as I can, really, when I am able to do this, it's my top priority right now. I sort of mentioned in a previous stand-up or a previous stream that there are really around six sort of, I call them right now mini projects. They're smaller in scope than the entire Antidote project, but they're pretty big. They represent non-trivial amounts of work, and I've organized them into mini projects based on some sort of bounded scope. For instance, the first mini project is the rewrite to Syringe, which I've been wanting to do almost before we launched this thing. And that requires a ton of work. It doesn't all need to be done at once, but it is a sort of a bounded scope, and it's useful, I think, for me to, instead of just do it, I think it's useful for me to invest the beginning of my time into building a design doc and a project plan, and then publishing that for everybody to not only see but also comment on and perhaps improve. And then after that, we can all sort of tackle the project as a community. I'm still at that point, still okay with doing the bulk of the work that needs done. It's a complicated piece of software it's very custom. So, if it comes down to it, I'm happy to do that. But I want to give the community the opportunity to get involved because, I keep telling people that I need help on the platform. And so I'm gonna put in the work that makes that not only possible but obviously welcoming. So what you can expect from me, at least in the next 2 weeks, is at minimum one of these docs to be published. Again, in draft form. We're not publishing any finished docs here. We're just starting them and then publishing them so that the community can see them. So the first one will be the Syringe rewrite. And to be clear, if you're not familiar with the effort, it's not actually a total rewrite. It's mostly a separation. Right now, Syringe is a single big ass binary. And what we want to do is we want to separate it out into little teeny microservices, which is which there's a bunch of advantages in doing that. Not only, yeah, there's a bunch of advantages in that. I'll wait until the draft plan doc is released. I have created, by the way, I've created channels in Discord, in our Discord server, for each mini project, at least the first two, MP1 for the syringe rewrite and MP2 for the Antidote Web revamp. And then there will be others as I create them, but these are the top two. These are the two sort of most important ones and the most pressing ones, because they deal with the two core components of the platform. So I would expect that it depends on how the remainder of the 0.4.0 release work goes, but assuming that goes relatively well, I would expect that I could have the draft plan document for mini project 1 finished by, probably not by the next stand-up, but I should have something to share by the next stand-up in terms of like showing the doc in progress, with the actual ultimate goal of having it published for the community to iterate on, that week sometime, next week sometime, maybe by the end of next week, but hopefully earlier than that. So I know that was a big rant, but the TLDR is, if you have any interest whatsoever in contributing to the platform, this is going to represent probably the biggest opportunity for you to do that in the entire project's life cycle, because while I obviously expect the platform to continue to be worked on for a long time, not only by me, but by everybody, these efforts in particular, these don't happen a lot. You don't keep rebuilding your software over a decade. You kind of do that as few times as possible, and then you iterate in smaller capacities. So if you want to get into the weeds of it, this would be the great time to do that. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about. The two updates for the design docs, those are imminent. Those are sort of next on my priority list, and then just an update on the governance. Anybody have any questions on either one of those, especially the governance? Because I was kidding earlier. I probably could answer at least some basic questions on like when we have what done, and of course, if you have comments and concerns like, hey, it'd be great if you could get this done before it's published, like, that's the kind of stuff I want to know about too.
Is the governance going to be more of a benevolent dictator for life sort of model, or something else?
Well, we don't use that term, but there is and I should say I'm new to all of this. Like I've been the recipient of a lot of this, but I've never organized this. Lisa, as you can imagine, has a non-trivial amount of experience setting up these communities. I have participated in many of them, so a lot of these terms are familiar to me. But I've never been part of like, putting the actual structure together. Lisa has, in this doc, she has several different entities. There's a technical community. Within that, you have a technical community leader. And then you have, within that, you have, committers who are effectively sort of like leaders on a particular sub-project. So like Syringe will have a set of committers, people who review code and merge it and things like that. At the moment, I fill both roles, but I absolutely would love to have a team of committers on every project, not just Syringe, but every project, who are sort of the first line of defense of shepherding contributions and whatnot, sort of how CloudToad is for the curriculum right now. So there's technical community leaders. It looks like and everything's election based. So, for instance, I would probably serve as the technical community leader for a year. But then I believe what she says in this doc is the TCL, which is a great acronym, TCL, will be elected by a simple majority or greatest plurality for a term of 1 year by private electronic vote of community members with documented contribution, blah, 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 blah. And then that gets into like who can vote, which is still something that's it's new to me, having to decide who can like vote on stuff. I'm not even used to that's the thing. Like I'm not even used to people voting on things for projects that I'm involved with. It's all a lot of structure, but it's good. It's necessary. It's stuff I would not have known to do. So in addition to the technical community, of course, you have also the steering committee, which is much more on the sponsorship side of things. So you have like the steering committee who instead of being like more in charge of like technical decisions, they're more like, what kind of things do we use our money for? How do we, do we elect different members to the committee? How do we develop like operational plans and talk about things like that? So all kinds of stuff. Basically, the non-technical side of things. It sounds like the steering committee's in charge of. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. But to answer your question specifically, it looks like the role that you're talking about is called the technical community leader, and it looks like that's election based, at least long term.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a BDFL sort of a model.
Correct.
Correct. It is elected. There are terms. There are the opportunity for the community to engage heavily and make it somewhat of a meritocracy. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, that's definitely the intention, and it looks like from this doc that what I've read that's what I hear. That's all I hear about is like who can vote and who votes for what, and it's like very, 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 very democratic sounding.
Yep.
So. Oh, it looks like it looks like the code of conduct actually is good to go. I was trying to find that. I thought I had a tab open with it. But anyway, I'm sure when Lisa gets back, she's going to dump all of these somewhere.
So Matt, you've talked about, needing developers to help with certain things, or if they want to, there's going to be opportunities here as you make this, the different projects friendlier to people who aren't you. So get their heads around the projects and the code that's been written.
Yeah.
Is there, no, I lost my train of thought. Crap. But it was going to be a really good question too.
No, that's okay. There are a few things I can bring up. While you think about that, one thing that we've already done, and we need to label more issues with this function. But one of the things in the last stand-up meeting that I attended, which was a few weeks ago because I was on PTO, I wrote a whole bunch of new documentation, and one of those docs covered a labeling function for all of our GitHub repositories. So this was something we actually used at Stackstorm that I found to be incredibly useful when I started on that team. Because Stackstorm is a kind of complicated piece of software, so I was struggling and figuring out, where to get involved and what to learn and whatnot. Usually, when you join a team like that, they're like, "Well, just look at the code and it'll become obvious." It was like, well, kind of, but not really. So what the Stackstorm team did was they actually created labels that indicate the level of anticipated from their perspective, anticipated complexity involved in a particular issue. So if it's like we need to rewrite the API server, then that's going to be complexity high. If it's, hey, there's a typo in this particular form or something like that, that's going to be a complexity low because it just doesn't require a lot of intimate knowledge of the software in order to write. But the cool thing about that is it's still a contribution. So you still need to know like how to work with Git, how to work with specifically the Git workflow of the project. It tells you, it still teaches you a bunch of things and it gets you contributing. So it's not pointless at all. It's very useful to have those kind of issues identified specifically. And then as you become more senior and more experienced on the team, you tend to sort of stay away from those issues because those are a great way of getting other people involved. And so you spend your time focusing on the really hard stuff. And that's what I'm going to be doing. Those labels exist, and I've been creating issues or tagging issues with those labels as I can. I definitely need to do more. But in addition to the design docs, which are more on specific tasks that need done, The issues that exist in each project, which may not have anything to do with a mini project, they may just be regular old bugs that kind of exist in isolation, or feature requests or any number of things like that. I'll still tag those with a complexity label. That way people understand which issues are sort of low-hanging fruit for first contributions. And that's across the board too. That's not just Syringe. That's Syringe, that's Antidote Web. I believe I created them in the curriculum as well. So Derek can make use of them if he feels like a particular lesson addition is fairly easy to do relative to another like more complicated lesson. So that's going to be a across the board experience you can expect if you want to get involved with anything. You sort of pick the project that you think you want to get involved with first, and you either look at one of the mini projects that we've established for that, or you look at the labels in each repository and identify low-hanging work that way. Did I just replace the thought that you were having with my rant?
I'm not going to get it back, I don't think.
Okay, because that's how I work. As I was talking, I realized like I hate it when people do that. Where it's kind of awkward, but when I am trying to remember what I was trying to say, I kind of just want people to shut up so that I can think. And I didn't do that for you, so I apologize.
No, man, it's fine. It's fine. I'm also taking notes on this call at the same time, so I remember what the heck was discussed, and that's also I'm derailing myself in that way.
I got you. Yeah. I got you. Anybody else have any questions on what was talked to? Derek, did I feel like I missed something? I can't remember what it could have been, but I don't know.
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay.
So, different question: Is there been any traction on other vendor involvement other than Juniper within RE Labs?
Yeah. Well, we have an ongoing conversation with a number of different vendors. Cumulus is one of them. We do have an image that works that we can, but we have to make sure everyone's on board with that before we make that for Cumulus in particular, before we make that publicly available. Also, this week, one of the things I definitely need to finish is creating an image for free range routing just by itself, like just FRR running on a inside of a Linux image, because there's some interest around that. So we will have the FRR image can happen, immediately. But using using Cumulus or using any other vendor who that's paid for normally by the customer is we need to go through a process to make that available on the platform. But I can say we do have a working Cumulus image, and we did have a working FRR container image, but after some discussion, we decided that we didn't really want to do that at the container level because it requires us to escalate the privileges of the container on the host, which would give anyone accessing that container access to resources on the platform that's hosting the site, and that's not viable. So we're just we backed away from that. Mm-hmm. But so we will have at least FRR in the near term, and then hopefully in time you'll see Cumulus appear as an alternate vendor.
Yeah, and there was actually sort of a dependency tree of work that needed done to get any of this working. The endpoints change actually was really the first thing that needed to get done, and that took a few weeks. Because the way that the previous platform worked was that you pretty much, if you wanted to use it was a crappy abstraction, if I'm being honest. Like if you wanted to use a network device, you had to like specify it like uniquely. It was kind of messy how you specified that you were using a network device versus maybe like a not network device. And then if you were using a network device, you could only the only network devices that you could automatically configure with the platform were devices supported by Napalm, because that was the only option that was used in the back end to configure devices automatically between stages. So if like you load the JSnappy lesson, for instance, there's a set of Junos configs that are stored in that lesson directory. And what would happen is syringe would just say, hey, Kubernetes spin up a config pod using that uses napalm to just load merge those configs, and it would call it a day. And as we started talking with Cumulus, they're like, okay, we need to be able to configure ours too, and we're not supported by napalm because they're just different. And so that, and in that, as well as a few other things, exposed to just some shortcomings in the old now approach. And so that was the first thing, was fixing all that. So now we support all kinds of really cool different ways of configuring endpoints. First off, the endpoint abstraction is a lot simpler. Endpoints are endpoints are endpoints. Doesn't matter if they're running network devices or anything else. It just doesn't matter at all. Everything, and then all endpoints can be automatically configured using a number of options. Napalm is still an option. You can use that if you want, but you can also just write a Python script and pop that in your directory, and it just executes that. So you can get pretty generic with what you want to do. Ansible in the same way. If you have an Ansible playbook that you want to use, you pop that in the directory and it runs it on your behalf, which again can be sort of, it's run very generically. It's not very opinionated on what's run within those set of options. So that was not easy. That got done over the course of a few weeks. But now that that's done, what that means is we have a lot more flexibility now with what images can be used. Cumulus and FRR being lead examples, ViOS as another one. So our goal is to use, now that those are even possible, whereas before they weren't, now that those are possible, we're going to do the bulk of the legwork to actually put them into the platform as a proof of concept. And then once Cumulus, as Derek said, approves that we can do this, we'll publish it and maybe build a proof of concept lesson around it. The intention is that causes a little bit of a snowball effect. Now that, once people see that we really mean business and this is really multi-vendor, we're hoping that brings a few other folks to the table too.
Yep. Because
you got to start somewhere. And we can't, unfortunately, we can't just put everybody's image in there. Cumulus is one thing, but you get into like Arista and Cisco and all of that. Like, yeah. It's tough. So we're hoping to build it, and maybe they will come. At the very least, we'll get some additional images out of it.
I was just on the phone with Carl Moberg and Omer Sultan at Cisco talking about NSO and that platform, which is highly multi-vendor as a tool that maybe fits into the scheme there. That might be an interesting way to crack the Cisco nut if that's a tougher set of conversations to have.
Yeah. Omar's good people. You're probably totally right about that.
Just because NSO they're talking about it being highly multi-vendor, and that's a really big deal to them, and they support a couple of hundred different, I don't know if it's platforms or OSs or what, but since it also fits into the world of automation, plausibly, there's a use case for that in the whole NRE Labs, the vibe, the purpose of the product. Mm-hmm. And again, once something that Cisco branded gets in there, maybe that gets easier for that ecosystem to open up. And that's another one of those snowball effect. Oh, they're involved? Interesting. Maybe I should get involved too. And then it becomes an issue of people, not that they don't want to get involved, that they don't dare be left out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, hey, Oberjix is on.
Yeah, he is.
A bit late. I just forgot about the meeting.
Oh, that's okay.
Time and.
That's okay.
And while you were discussing matters, I was trying to forward Tony Hurst, who's asking questions on Twitter, so that he asks on Discourse or the Discord chat, because he has questions about the architecture of Antidote, making diagrams and so on, and I'm not so sure about the best way to represent everything and so on. So I think he's trying to create some documentation about virtual environments, and Antidote catched his attention. So I don't know if you have time to either follow up on Twitter or maybe just contact him. I guess he's a valuable, interesting person to talk to.
Sure. Yeah, I did see the tweets a little bit ago.
Yeah.
I was gonna respond after this, but I think we should. What I'll do is I'll respond and let him know the best place to ask those questions at the moment is or I think for his questions the best place is the community forums. That way everybody can kind of benefit from the answers as well.
Yeah. Sure.
And then I'll also forward him a link to to this so that he can join next week, hopefully.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I guess he's a little bit like me or Brian Linkletter, someone who's not in the networking community directly, but might be interested, maybe contributing and so on. So
yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I'll follow up. I'll follow up with him.
Okay, cool.
Anything on your end? Any updates you want to share?
Just thanking you for all the work for 0.4 and for the documentation a bit before. So I'm looking forward to testing everything and maybe just trying to port my VNC experiment hack to the latest release.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure though I'll have time to do that before I go on vacation, but who knows? Okay.
Well, yeah, the abstraction that's in place now, I think, should be a lot more conducive to that because there's actually, I believe in Syringe, there's actually where I declare the different presentation options. I believe I did declare VNC, but I might have commented it out. So there should be at least starter code there to make it possible.
Okay.
And if not, it shouldn't be that difficult to change. I think the biggest concern that I had at the time was the abstraction that was in place because the whole presentations concept wasn't a thing. It was kind of assumed that everything would be SSH, and then there was this like really crappy side-loaded HTTP iframe kind of experience if you wanted to do that. And I didn't really talk about it because it was so crappy.
But in any case, even if you didn't do the VNC or I wouldn't touch the Go code of Syringe, I could probably try and make a demo using the iframe, the web presentation. What is it called now?
Yeah, it's just an HTTP presentation.
Yeah, the HTTP. I could use that to display some image that contains no VNC. So
yeah, that might work.
It would be embedded inside the container instead of being outside at Syringe or at Antidote Web level. So
yeah, I would love to see that. That'd be very interesting. That would be a lot easier. I don't know if that's what we want to do like long term. Like we might still want to treat VNC as a first class citizen,
but for demonstration purpose, it would be cool.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. At the very least, it'll give us something to start with. Yeah, please do that. That'd be amazing.
Also, yesterday, you and Derek mentioned mini VMs, like being able to create images, but instead of being a container, it's actually a VM.
Mm-hmm.
I did some experiment on the KubeVirt and Kata containers a while back. So I forgot about the details. I'm doing so many different things, so I forgot. But I have a couple GitHub repos that I cloned and I adapted to try and mix QEMU VMs with containers on the same Kubernetes cluster using not Minikube, but another variant using Vagrant or using some other virtual machine
Sure.
QEMU with nested virtualization, stuff like that. So I did report a few bugs because there were issues with the runtime. I don't remember exactly all the details, but that's something I was interested in the need to secure a bit what happens inside the containers. Like you don't want people to be mining crypto money on your labs,
Sure,
stuff like that.
sure.
So
Yeah. What was the last thing you said? Where did you see that part? I'm curious about that.
I was thinking about letting my students perform labs in an autonomous way where they would have a full system available in a container. And then I figured out that I would want to secure stuff. So it's a bit in the same ideas. Do you allow the containers to get access to the net or
Sure.
not? So that's one issue that you noticed, and also trying to figure out if someone in a container could escape, perform nasty stuff. So the idea that you can secure the containers with an embedding QEMU VM might offer added security or not. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
just playing around with those technologies.
Yeah, totally. So I'll mention this is actually one of the mini projects. I think it's like the 6th. So they're basically there's a lot of things that need to be considered there. A lot of what you touched on, not just what technology we want to use, but also how do we improve the way that images get created. We need to I think we need to do a little bit of a better job on creating a pipeline for that kind of work.
Yeah.
So that it's all very consistent. Because right now each image is kind of done artisanally, like by hand, steel cut, and that's not sustainable. So, and that's on top of the fact that there's also other lessons like as you mentioned, and as I've run into, for instance, there's somebody who wants to build a lesson on Docker, and you just can't do that without some really bad shortcuts. Because we're running everything in Docker or in Kubernetes, but through Docker. So yeah, and I want to get into like eBPF, for instance, and you can't do that kind of stuff unless you have kernel access. So what I want to do, like the all up goal, I think for us in this particular effort is how do we build a user experience that is as flexible and as painless as the current sort of Docker build process, which has a ton of advantages. The whole immutable infrastructure thing is really core to I think the value proposition of the project. How do we preserve that while also leveraging technologies like the ones that you mentioned, which provide like basically VM level isolation? Because the problem with VMs is they're VMs. So how can we preserve that?
I'm not sure I remember exactly, but I think in one of the two, is it Kata containers or is it KubeVirt? I don't remember. Maybe it's KubeVirt. They kind of use the Docker Hub to host like the onion layers of the Docker images, but for the VMs. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think so. What I've seen of KubeVirt, it focuses mostly on the CRDs that make it possible to like manage those VMs. I didn't see as much, I think, on the actual image build themselves. I think
I'm not sure
more on the
anymore,
management side of things, like how do we start and stop VMs in Kubernetes, that kind of thing. So that's cool, but to be honest, we're going to be doing most of that from Syringe anyway. Which Syringe can orchestrate that. I mean, Syringe already does that kind of thing right now. Creating CRDs and doing that kind of stuff for networking. But the build process is also kind of interesting. Dimitri, a colleague of mine, recently shared me a link to Weave's Ignite project, which is built. It's a little bit of software on top of the AWS Firecracker stuff, which they open sourced as sort of how they do serverless in little mini VMs, which looks promising. But I haven't made any decisions on that. My goal right now, the only thing I'm doing right now is I'm just taking all of these links and putting them into a Google Doc as part of the design doc for Mini Project 6, because this is going to be a whole mini project. I totally know that's going to happen. So if you have links that you want to send me, please do. I'll add them to this doc, and then at the other end of it, when I finally get this project doc finished, or at least the draft finished, all of those links will be there, and we can start making some technical decisions.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. So it's 10 minutes till, and we should probably open the floor here at least for a minute or two if anyone has anything else they'd like to bring up. Okay. I'm gonna assume there's nothing.
Yeah, nothing here.
I'm good. I already got my questions. Already got my questions in.
Nice.
And bypassing, I guess, the hard sell, Tom, if there's anything we can do to help you get more familiar with the project, or any questions you want to answer, please don't hesitate.
So yes, I just waited till the end, and I will be very grateful if you will somehow share with me where I can. Actually, I will tell shortly one thing. I tried in a real lab on the very first beginning, but till now I didn't go back there and check what is like new, how it looks and how it's working, what we can do, what we can't. Yes, so basically all information will be for me good. Yes, but actually
Sure.
I would like to know where is the community at the moment. Yes, and this session is for me actually introduction. I was listening and try to understand who is doing what, how, and so on. Yes.
Yeah, looks like Oberjix is posting something, a link for me, I guess. Yeah. So if you look in the chat, I just posted a link to the docs where we have a contribute page. There's a list of there's actually quite a few areas of the project that you can contribute to, and it's all totally based on preference. For instance, if you have more of like a network operator background and you've sort of done automation, or you're learning automation, you want to share what you've learned, then contributing to the NRE Labs curriculum might be the way to go. In which case, you look at the specific page that says contributing to the NRE Labs curriculum, and then you sort of follow that down. There's a ton of useful info there. If instead you want to work on the actual project, like how all of this stuff works on the back end, there's still a number of things that you can work on. Like for instance, Syringe is sort of the back end component. So if you want to work on sort of back end systems and sort of systems programming, that kind of thing, that's a good way to go. If you like.
Basically, my background it's more network, yes, and I will try to see these things related with network and network automation. Yes, that's like on what I'm focused mostly.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, in that case, go ahead and just click on the contributing to the NRA Labs curriculum and let us know what you think about that.
Okay, I will try. When I find just some time and peace, I will try to do that.
There's also a page on that that says community, and there's links on that page to Discord and the community forums and all of that. So in between these meetings, if you have any questions, feel free to use those to ask.
Okay, great. I will check. I will check. This last link, what you shared, that's like contributing page, and all this stuff you can find there. Yes.
Yeah, the link I shared was, we have like sort of an all-up contributing page in the documentation. There's a bunch of children pages underneath that. But since you said you are, mostly you come from a networking background, the specific page that you probably want to look at is, it says contributing to the NRE Labs curriculum. That's probably the one you want to start with.
Okay, contributing to NRE Labs curriculum.
Yeah.
Okay, I will check that. Okay.
So let's see. I will. I want to. Before we go, I just want to make sure I have any action items. I Oberjix the the mini project stuff. Obviously, I think that'll help you. Maybe with a focus on the last mini project for the virtual image pipeline and whatnot. I still think the antidote web and the syringe mini projects are still probably like the leading priorities, but then maybe that project will be like the third one. Does that sound good?
It's not high priority for the moment anyway. You have a lot of work to do on the on the core.
Sure. Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'll follow up with you. Publishing that doc actually probably won't be a ton of work. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just put it together and publish it, and that way you can add things to it on your own without having to go through me. That'll be pretty easy to do. Ethan, I can't remember. Is there anything you need from us right now specifically?
No, my questions were all just curiosities about the governance and so on. There's no action items from me right now. I know we're waiting for new lessons on the Bash scripting.
Yep.
Then at some point we're going to translate that into the Packet Pusher stack and start working on evangelization. But we were kind of waiting
yes.
for content settled before we put that evangelization plan into action.
Got it. And actually, that reminded me. One of the reasons we're breaking out the curriculum release is so that we can do that more quickly, so that the platform and the curriculum aren't tightly coupled with each other. So you can release. Derek will be able to release content a lot more frequently than waiting on the platform, because the platform has its own cadence, and it wasn't a problem until now. But the more we go, we're like, man, we really need to separate these things. So that's the main reason for that is to get you that content as soon as possible.
Yeah, and Derek, you and I got to get our heads together offline about just a time that we can get me up to speed on building content for the platform, which maybe that needs to wait a little bit while the back end settles. But that's something I still want to do that I think makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You had put it out. You said third quarter, like. I guess it is third quarter, isn't it? Or almost third quarter?
Yeah,
it is third quarter.
Calendar year anyway.
Yeah.
No rush, buddy. No rush. Just
just send me an invite. You have my email. I'll make sure I'm free. Send me an invite. And then we'll figure out a day from there. I'll make sure we do this. As soon as you're able.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then it's just about time to close out, I suppose. Thanks everybody for participating, and we'll be posting this. We'll post the meeting online shortly, and we'll summarize, what took place and post it on the community site before the end of the day.
Excellent.
Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Guys. Yeah.
Have a good day.
See you guys. Have a good day too. Bye.
See you.
See you.
See you.